Hi, I'm Ian.
And I'm Jason.
And this is Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast where we bring you the actual ghost stories
With the actual history.
in the actual place. On this episode of Ghosts and Bears, we are heading off on our road trip and you're coming along with us. We stopped off at 108 Mile House, and the things we found and the things we personally experienced were a little more than disturbing. Coming up on Ghosts and Bears. Well, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. How are you?
Good. Jason and I went on a extra long weekend, and we covered how many kilometers?
About 5,000. So
Woo!
about 3,000 miles.
We went Alberta, we went Montana, we went Idaho,
Washington,
and then back up into
through British
BC.
Columbia.
It was kind of amazing. And also on our journey, we were thinking about you guys, and we gathered stories from Helena, Montana.
Helena was beautiful.
Helena was beautiful. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Yes.
And what was that weird little town we're going to be doing a whole episode on? What's it called again? Why can't I remember the name of it?
It evades me too.
It's so weird. They filmed a terrible movie there. It's
Dante's Peak.
Yeah, so terrible it's good. Dante's Peak.
I want to say Wayne, Washington. No. It's
No.
not Wayne. No, it's in Idaho, isn't it?
So I think so. Yes, it is. Because the book I got was covered Idaho and Coeur d'Alene in the area. Anyway, that's going to be an upcoming episode. Helena will be an upcoming episode. We've got some good stuff coming, so I'm excited. Quesnel. We stopped in Quesnel to see Mandy the Haunted Doll, which we will be.
She was
quite the celebrity in the 90s.
Yeah, she was on Montel Williams. That doll is freak show.
It is a freak show.
I've got some good photographs, a whole bunch of great photographs. I used my Leica monochrome, so that is an interesting camera because it only shoots in black and white and it's purely manual.
And Mandy, even scarier in black and white.
Yes, this doll was on Montel Williams.
Yeah,
it was an international celebrity, and now it sits in a what do you call it? It sits in a museum in Quesnel.
Yeah,
so we finally got to experience it.
Yeah.
It was interesting because we didn't see the doll the first time.
This is the weird part. So we go into this museum, which is well worth it. Actually, no. Let's just save it for that episode.
Yes.
Let's save it for that episode. It was a weird experience.
It hit itself.
Yeah. And the weird part was we went to 108 Mile House and then Quesnel on the same day, and both places we had hits, and that doesn't always happen.
No, but
cool.
108 really stuck out.
So Jason,
in completely different juxtapositions.
And Jason and I had separate experiences, which we didn't understand until at the very end of our time there, we met the director who gave us some light into why we had different experiences in different places. So it was actually really cool. So we're going to talk about the history.
Well, I basically said my experience was quite different from yours, and then
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. All right. So, Jason, you're going to do the history of 108, and just to give some context, 108 is part of the Gold Rush Trail, correct?
Correct.
From California all the way up to the Yukon.
So, in 1862, the Caribou Wagon Road was started, and that started basically around Lillooet, the original Mile Zero.
And that was tied to the steamboats, right? Because steamboats were the major way to get up and down the river.
Correct, the Fraser River.
So if you were a prospector, you would have jumped on a steamboat either in Victoria or possibly Vancouver, right? And then headed up the river as far as you could go. And then they're like, okay, get off. And you would have joined a wagon trail.
Yeah,
and this would have been part of it, right?
So I believe the new Mile Zero, Spence's Bridge, I think we clocked that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 108 was a major town. There was a famous individual named Agnes McVie. She operated there between 1875 and 1885. And I definitely felt her.
But before we even get to that,
like me.
we need to talk about the area of 108 Mile House? Like, what was there? What's going on with it now? How many people live there? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so the First Nations had been there, settled hundreds of years before the white explorers came, and then they started the fur trading, pretty much like the rest of the Caribou. And the 1850s was kind of the explosion of the Caribou gold rush, so to speak. And as you came up the Caribou Wagon Trail, you ended up upon like 83 Mile House, 70, 100, 108. And they were kind of like pit stops on the way to Barkerville, amongst other places.
Love the Barkerville. Going to be doing an episode about that too.
Yeah, Barkerville will be in another episode.
Oh, yeah.
And 108 is located on a heritage site today. Several of the buildings are original, and some of them have been, well, like Agnes McVie's place was torn down, and then but it was reused. I believe that the lumber and what have you was used to build the postmaster's house, et cetera, all that jazz. So many newcomers to the South Caribou and Ranch may be unaware of the grandiose scheme first envisioned by 108 Recreational Ranch developer, a vision that never came to fruition.
As it most often doesn't.
In the 70s, the project consisted of 27,000 acres of land, including the resort complex.
Hold on, that's a lot.
Yeah.
27,000 acres in the 70s even?
Yeah, it's said that
crazy.
Agnes McVie basically did her thing and buried a lot of gold in and amongst that region around 108.
And they found some of it.
Yes, when they built the airport, they uncovered some of it.
Which is wild, because a lot of times those rumors turn out to be completely, rumors.
Yes, well, I keep mentioning her because she sounded like a psychopath.
Yes, she definitely
I definitely felt her. She did not like my presence, and there's good reason why.
Yep.
And then when we moved to another section of this heritage site, I got a bit of I found my experience in amongst another story was very similar to another story's, but I was a lot more welcome than poor Ian was, ironically enough. So it was a complete juxtaposition.
It was pretty cool.
So,
I was just going to say, there's kind of the way it broke down over the years. 1863 is a guy named William J. Roper got 320 acres of land. He built the log 108 Roadhouse, or the 108 Hotel, north of the road across the highway from the present day place. Built a log stable and a log shed north of the road, again, across from the actual heritage site now. And then in 1871, he went, screw it, and he moved to Cherry Creek near Kamloops. From there, and this happened a lot, they would start these buildings and they'd just kind of walk away. 1871 to 1880, no one really knows. There's no evidence of any ownership. But in 1875, who shows up, Jay?
Oh, Agnes McVie.
And as well?
Oh, her husband, Jim, and the brother-in-law, Al Riley.
And they were there for 10 years.
10 years, yes.
Right. They definitely had something going on, which we will talk about. And in 1880, there was a telegraph operator, stock raiser, dairy farmer, trader, and a BX agent. BX was a steamship that ran up and down. He built a log dairy. He built a blacksmith shop in 1880. And then he sold all of 108 on December 30th to Stephen Tingley for $320, which would have been more money than, would have been normal around that time. He built a barn. He built a big stable, the stable, as we both experienced, huge stable. And then from 1903 to 1915, a man named Jeffrey Lancelot Watson bought it. He built the Watson Manor 4 miles away and turned his attention to ranching. He had the big stable. And then in 108, in 1904, 108 miles ceased to be a roadhouse and stopping place because Watson turned it into a ranch, and he was a breeder of purebred Clydesdale horses and Highland cattle. He tore down the extra stable north of the road, but the Clydesdale barn was built by Gilbert Monroe for Captain Watson in 1908, and in 1915, Captain Watson was killed in World War I. So there's some definite long history there. The site itself, really pretty.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It backs onto a lake. You come kind of around a corner and over a rise, and there's 108 Mile House, right? Mm. We were going to spend, what, maybe half an hour there?
Yeah, we ended up spending 2 to 3 hours there.
And it went by...
Yeah, in the blink of an eye.
Yeah. The two ladies who were working that day, lovely, very kind, very helpful. Jason and I kind of walked around separately, which was weird that we did that, but in the end, way better.
Yeah, because we couldn't corroborate any stories.
And we didn't know much of the history.
Completely different experiences.
100%. And we didn't know much of the history. So I got to walk around, experience all the buildings, I thought, and we'll get to that when we tell the story. And then I went back and started talking to the two ladies who were the park interpreters that day. And they were confirming everything I'd been feeling.
Yes. And they had... They expressed interest in my variances and said, oh my gosh, that totally makes sense. We never thought that you being half native or visually native would have provoked a completely different response.
Exactly.
She's like, that totally makes sense why you would have had a completely different experience in 2 different sections of the property. And I mean, they were completely in juxtaposition to one another.
Yeah.
Like Ian's experience in one was positive, it was negative in the other, and mine was quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Mine was very negative in the one and then very positive in the other.
Exactly. So the site's made up of a large red house with a metal roof and then a bunch of smaller log buildings, except for the really big barn at the end.
Yeah, that's the Clydesdale.
And the only advice the interpreter gave me was, yes, there's active energy here, and don't take any pictures in the barn. That's what she said. What I heard was, don't take any pictures upstairs in the barn. I thought, well, that's not a problem. So, should I talk about my experience first, and then you talk about what happened with you?
Yes.
Okay. So I went to all of the buildings. I just stopped, and you can kind of step inside the door, and then it's kind of, fenced off like they do in these places. And I definitely got some different energy feelings from different buildings. The post house, absolutely. The little stable, absolutely. The big red house downstairs, not so much. But when I went upstairs, I definitely got the feeling of an older woman. It's got a bunch of bedrooms up there because, of course, it was used as a hotel. And I definitely got the feeling of an older woman who was fine with me being there, kind of took it as, this is what normally happens. I came downstairs and I went, bless you.
Sorry.
And I went off.
The smoke.
I know, it's so smoky here with the forest fires. I went off to the left and I went to the buildings and I found one which I thought was the barn. And I took pictures because I didn't go upstairs. So I thought it was fine. And then... Bless you again.
Jeepers, the smoke is bad.
It is bad. It is bad.
Something like 100 forest fires right around us.
It's not good right now. And then I went upstairs. Oh, sorry. And then I went back to the red house and I was talking to the ladies and I said, I didn't really feel anything in the barn. And the one woman looks at me and goes, you didn't? She goes, that barn, I have never been able to go more than halfway down that barn. So then I thought, well, I better check it out. So I hoof it to the end of the property, and sure enough, there's this giant barn, the one we talked about where they had the Clydesdales in it. And I went in there, and I felt it immediately. It was very dark in there, very scary. And I took a picture at the first stall, and then I got to the second stall, and there's probably, 10 different, 20 stalls altogether, but each side maybe 10 stalls, would you say?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The photograph.
Yeah. So I went in and I got to the second stall.
It's an absolutely immense building.
It is. And I got to the second stall and I went, I don't think I'm supposed to be in here. And I looked all the way down to the very end and there's a window or an opening at the very end. But just to the left of the opening, there was this, I don't know, shadow of a man, man height. I could see head, shoulders, arms, outline, legs. And I was like, I'm good. And then just as I'm sort of getting ready to literally turn around and come out upstairs where I know there's nothing because the ladies have told me, bang.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm good. Yeah, okay. I hoof it back to the house and I tell the ladies. And one of the ladies said, well, it was just Canada Day. We had like 10,000 people through the property over the weekend. And she goes, any of the energy that is here
is exhausted.
It's kind of done. Like, it's kind of fed up with it all. So that was my experience. And then Jason went off while I was looking in the lower part of the house and looking at some of the pictures and things like that. Jason went off with one of the interpreters.
No, I didn't.
Oh, I thought you did. I thought you headed to the barn with her.
No,
she showed up. Okay, so you tell what happened with you now.
Yes. So I went upstairs in the red house, and that was not pleasant. I got the sense of GTFO now. What the heck are you doing here? I definitely sensed an older lady.
Like anger? Like she was
furious.
Annoyed?
Like, what the heck are you doing here? This is a prominent, wealthy white person's house. And I didn't think anything of it until I was zooming down the stairs. I made the comment like, okay, I get it. I'm gone. I literally said that. I hoofed down the stairs. But yes, that same white presence, it makes sense. Why the heck would visually half native person be doing in a prominent White House? I couldn't look in the rooms for more than a split second. That was not cool.
And when we talked to the director after, she kind of smiled and said, that makes sense because First Nations people never allowed in the house.
Well, that's not initially what she said, but she said it does make sense.
Yeah. And
she had never, ever encountered someone who's had that experience. She's had people where it's unpleasant upstairs, but not get the F out.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I said, well, my experience in the Clydesdale barn was in juxtaposition to that, I went up to the big Clydesdale barn and stood at the end in the open way, and I could feel the sense of, what the heck are you doing here? And I saw the same figure at the end of the left, at the very end of the barn. So I just said, I'm not here to cause any commotion, and I'm here to enter the place respectfully, and I would like to take some black and white photos. The interesting thing is my camera looks like an old school camera. So because it looks like a proper old school Leica, like film, I don't think he perceived it as a big threat.
Right.
In complete juxtaposition to a big Fuji or Canon, just big digital camera. This thing is an unassuming, it's a digital camera. It just shoots in black and white. So completely manual lens, everything else. So I was able to get some good photos. My apologies for the sniffles. The smoke is really bad.
But what happened?
Oh, yeah. So I was standing at the entryway, and one of the ladies had come up that you were talking to that said she could only ever go halfway down.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I think the presence is wondering what I'm doing here. I made some clear statements that, I'm not here to disrupt anything. I'm here respectfully. I would like to take some photos if that's okay. It's black and white, blah, blah, blah. And she had basically said, well, let's go in. And I'm like, are you sure? And we heard a knock upstairs, a loud one. And I'm like, okay, that's odd, but
maybe that's a yes for you.
I heard, oh, you know what?
You did say that, didn't you?
I did say that.
Because you do that all the time. Once for yes, twice for no.
no.
And he made a knock for
goodness.
you. But when I thought I need to get out of here, what did I get?
I made
Boom.
that.
Yeah.
But I made that statement. So I looked at Ian. I made that statement about 5 minutes before.
There you go.
So in that respect, I wasn't thinking in those terms.
But he must have given you a sense. He must have said yes.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Wow, cool. No, I didn't know that.
I remember hearing the knock, but that wasn't in reference to anything at that point.
Turns out it was.
So we walked in, and she talks a bit about the Clydesdale horses and speaks a bit about the history. And for the first time, I think she felt a little bit... she was nervous. She was just had the same Same feeling as Ian. And that's in respect to the fact that she would never only walk halfway. So we hit the halfway point and she starts getting a little upset. And I said, let's go all the way.
Yeah.
I said, I don't believe that it's afraid of me anymore.
Or angry with you.
Yeah. And we went all the way and touched the other end. And I think she was blown away. She's never, ever gone the entire way.
Wow.
And I got some photos, and that was when we came out, and she's like, that makes sense. And we kind of all discussed that with the president of the society there.
Right. So she showed up, and she was very happy to have us there.
She was saying the history of why he might perceive me
right.
as not a threat.
And me as a get out.
Yes, because it was in the exact same context in reverse. Apparently, he enjoyed the natives that were running around because they were herding up the horses.
The wild horses, yeah.
He would break them and then ship them to Vancouver Island to be sold.
Yeah.
And with some of those proceeds, he helped the natives with food.
Yeah, he'd throw dinners.
Yes.
Like he'd actually celebrate with them. He wasn't just like, oh, here's your pay, get out.
Yeah, no, it was. So that was why with Ian's case into that Clydesdale barn, he's like, what the heck are you doing here?
Yeah.
Leave. Right? Because he would have perceived another white man as a threat.
Yeah.
Yet, I'm a native, and he saw that, and he was,
it's like, oh, a friend.
I think the lady that entered the barn with me was a little surprised that he allowed me to take photos. Because she's like, I'm sensing that he's indifferent. And I said, honestly, I get the same. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? No.
Oh, no. He was not happy with me.
I think, I approached it from kind of, I'm not here to, market this. I'm here to have kind of a...
And we're going to post...
respectful and take pictures so that people can experience it for those who can't come up.
And we're going to post pictures on our Patreon for people if you want to see them. Jason's got his black and whites. He's going to transfer over so I can put them up.
They're already done.
Perfect.
And the president says that completely makes sense, that in the Red House, Ian was like,
fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't great. It wasn't an active reception, but it wasn't like get the heck out of here.
Yeah.
Where it was with me. And then in the Clydesdale, it was completely different for both of us.
Yeah.
And I think that's because we entered these areas in completely different times. Part of the reason why I was delayed was I was buying us ice cream at the little vendor truck that was by the entrance.
Yeah.
Because it was hot.
It was lunchtime. It's a pretty cool place. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to go there.
The beauty.
We left money for donations, of course, but it doesn't cost anything to go. It is absolutely stunning. And I must have driven past it so many times because it's on the major Caribou Highway heading up to Prince George.
Highway 97.
So the link between Vancouver and the north. And I must have passed it lots, but I never stopped. And I'm so glad we did.
It's a little shocking. Other buildings that I felt had presences, the schoolhouse for sure.
Yeah.
The one, what is it, the loggers cabin?
Yep. The trapper's cabin, yes.
Yeah, the trapper's cabin.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
No. And the other building...
I didn't go to the post office. I didn't want to go near that.
No, building. And that building, and there's a good reason for that.
Now, that's part of what I was going to read.
And also, so was the other building, the one right by the water.
Yeah.
That's the one they used as the barn, and also a place where they kept some of the unfortunate people, which we're going to talk about when we come back, and we will get into the actual real other people's ghost stories and also the history, because 108 Mile wasn't just a stopping place on the Caribou Trail. In fact, the Caribou Trail was an incredibly dangerous place to be, because if you were traveling by yourself as a prospector, if you were traveling up with a whole bunch of goods and supplies, you were a target. And if you were coming back from the gold fields with your little pocket of gold, you were also a target. So most men didn't travel alone. They would have found 2 or 3 others to travel with, hopefully trustworthy, and they would have looked out for each other. But a lot of men chose to go it alone, and a lot of those men never came back. And we're going to talk about one of the places we know for sure was happening and why when we come back. And welcome back.
Welcome back.
So Jason's going to read to us basically the history of one of the more famous, and probably only because she got caught, dangers to prospectors on the route of the Gold Rush Trail. And she's got quite the story.
Yeah, she's a vicious woman.
She was a very vicious woman and has left left a mark, not only by the victims, but also through her own actions. I think her own energy is still there.
She was probably influenced by the potato famine.
Well, she was Scottish, though.
Yeah, well.
The whiskey famine?
You never know. The lack of scotch and no bagpipes and the fact that she doesn't have any potatoes. I don't know.
Well, now the history was she had murdered people in Scotland.
Yes, so let's get to the history.
Well, let's get to it.
Okay, so this comes from the CaribouGoldRush.com. So Agnes McVie was the proprietor of a 3-story inn called the 108 Mile Hotel, which we talked about from 1875 to 1885 on the Caribou Wagon Trail. She came from Scotland to settle in British Columbia. Oh, that's a surprise. Why? Because she murdered people.
I guess that's a popular reason to leave home.
Yeah, she really hated men, maybe. I don't know. She only liked certain ones. So she was described as a beautiful blue-eyed woman who dealt in the sale of young girls as well as food, liquor, and lodging.
As you do.
And probably exploited the native women.
Oh,
it goes without saying.
There wouldn't have been a whole lot of young white girls running around the Caribou Gold Trail.
No.
So it doesn't say it, and it never says it, by the way, in any of the sources I've read. But come on. They were basically kidnapping young native girls and selling them to the prospectors for companionship.
So the murderous story of her begins on a bright March morning in 1875, as one does. It's spring. A startup
Time
spring.
to kill.
So a very prosperous Caribou country miner named Henry Dawson arrived at McVie's hotel. I was looking up Henry Dawson because I was wondering if he might be related.
Is he Dawson's Creek?
No.
He's not tied to Dawson's Creek? Because Dawson's Creek was really seen as the end of the gold run in BC, because then it goes into the Yukon.
Creek.
Dawson Creek. Am I thinking of the cheesy 90s TV show?
Yes, Dawson Creek.
Dawson Creek is in northern BC.
Creek?
Is got James Vanderbeek. Yes, I am clear on that. Yeah. I don't want to wait for our lives to be over. That's not it.
Dawson Creek? Yes.
Dawson Creek.
I don't believe so, but I actually was wondering if he was related to my grandfather, Horace Dawson.
Horace Dawson, there you go.
They're all from the same region.
As long as these people went anywhere. All right, keep going.
So Dawson had $11,000 worth of gold, dust, and nuggets on him. So he was doing quite well, which he had recently discovered from his lonely claim in the Caribou Goldfields. Note the word lonely.
Lonely.
So Angus was married to a man.
For the picking.
Yeah, Agnes.
Agnes.
It's just the silly.
That's a whole different story.
No. Yes. Agnes. I'll do my best to enunciate thanks to this silly nose thing.
That's okay.
It's just the smoke is so bad.
I know.
It's killing my eyes. And so he was married to a man named. She was married to a man named Jim. I'm really mucking it up.
Amazing new story coming out now.
Let me try to clean my glasses. I can't.
I love it.
It's the smoke's so bad I can't even see through my glasses.
I'm not even getting genders correctly.
Apparently she was a man.
Married to a man. Who's heard of such a thing?
Well, that would be
ungodly.
The Hubble Farm here.
Which we should talk about as an episode, because that was hilarious.
Yes, there was a whole lot of bigotry and stuff happening out here, I guess.
Anyway,
whatever.
Back to dear Agnes.
Agnes.
There you go.
N-U-S was married to a man named Jim, a devoted individual. I like how they put that. A devoted, really?
Mm-hmm. Well, he would have to be because of what's coming next.
Well, he did all the chores around the hotel. Mm-hmm. Another man named Al Riley, a bartender, was Agnes's, there you go, apostrophe S, son-in-law, and a scheming, muscular young brute. Well, that sounds like something she'd be down for.
Oh, yeah.
So both men were completely dominated by Agnes, well, as you were, who was not only very attractive in face and figure, but according to old legal records found in Scotland, was wanted for 7 murders and 3 beatings in her hometown.
Oh, beatings too.
She was...
Oh, what a sweetie.
She was a dominatrix. It said she could lift a 400-pound sack of grain with ease.
Wow.
Maybe that's why she's mad.
No kidding.
How many of those she had to lift.
Yeah.
So young girls running away from home often came through the area of the 108 Mile Hotel on the way to the Caribou Goldfields to find a rich husband, as you do.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wrote an economics article on different males, like different classes of males.
Right.
Talking about normal goods and inferior goods.
Oh.
It really provoked a few professors.
You know what? It just occurred to me with those girls. Mm-hmm. I could see those girls running up there to be dancers and provide other things that only women could provide up in the goldfields. But I also think there was plenty of First Nations women getting snagged too, because we saw that on Vancouver Island.
Funny you would say that, because it is said that Agnes would capture these young
girls
and tie them up with ropes that she kept hidden beneath her skirt.
Wow. That's some heavy. Well, yeah, because she would have had like a cage. What are those things? They had like big.
Goodness.
Yeah, those big. Well, there was multi-levels of underwear.
Course. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so she could do that.
Put some rope up there, too.
As one does. Okay, keep going.
So Henry Dawson had heard about Agnes, and the items she had for sale, came to 108 Mile House looking for a girl to purchase. Henry was told by Jim McVie that Agnes was away in Fort Kamloops, but she would be back later that evening. Wait, what?
Keep going.
How could she get there so fast?
I don't know.
Teleport?
Well, maybe she's on her way home already.
Oh, okay. In the meantime, Agnes was waiting outside in the nearby stable. Agnes handed the rifle to Al Riley. He then crept silently up to the open window and shot Henry Dawson in the back, killing him almost instantly. Almost.
Messy.
Jim McVie then drove the dead body in his wagon to a nearby lake and dumped the body in. Henry Dawson's body was discovered later the next day.
And we should say, oh no, we'll wait.
So according to official reports of the local authorities, quote, the deceased Henry Dawson, late of the Caribou Goldfields, was most foully murdered by a robber who made off with his personal possessions and his horse.
I love old-timey crime reports.
Well, they forget that they kept his girl too. But, you know, basically I think they took the $11,000. Whatever.
That's a huge amount of money for back then.
Huge. Immense.
Shut up, just go.
Massive.
Oh, stop it.
So in the course of over the next several years, more than 59 bodies were found in the small lakes of the area.
59.
She was a busy woman.
Well, making a lot of cash.
You got to make money.
Got to make the money.
So in June 1885, well, geez, that's 10 years. So that's an average of 6 per year.
Holy.
That's the ones they recovered.
Yeah, true.
So in June 1885, shortly before she was brought to trial, she committed suicide by poisoning. Al Riley was found guilty of the charges and hanged. So the hotel was torn down in 1892 and was moved to the other side of the road. There, the wood was used to make a telegraph store and the post house. Remember, I was talking, I didn't like the post house?
Nope.
Still stands to this day. The interesting thing is she buried much of her loot around the hotel and nearby fields. And even though her treasure was thought to be between around 100 to 150,000, only 8,500 has ever been reported to be found. So various estimates put it at about 150,000. Wow. Yeah. And I've got this other story that you can read with regard more specifically to Agnes. She was nuts.
Yeah, she was pretty nuts.
Like, I mean, you know, that's what they recovered was 59 bodies. I'm not sure how many.
All right.
But there are other stories, like I think Ian had found one where a person took a picture and had more to reveal than the picture had.
Yeah, I'll read this one first, though. The operation of the murderous Agnes McVie had been progressing smoothly for a number of years, and according to various estimates, Agnes's stolen gold nuggets or coin and treasures totaled over $150,000. One day, a strapping, blonde-haired young gambler named MacDonald came through from Fort Langley, and Agnes fell in love at first sight with the prospective victim. The usual preparations had been made for a quick demise, and Jim McVie hitched the horse up to the death wagon. While Al Riley waited outside for Agnes to give him the rifle, Agnes suddenly decided she did not want MacDonald murdered. No, she said. He's come to buy a girl, and girls I have for sale. Al Riley stared at her in surprise. She agreed to sell MacDonald a very beautiful 17-year-old girl for the price of $4,000. He paid the price, tied the girl to one of his horses, as you do, and rode off into the night down the Caribou Wagon Road. For part of that night, Jim McVie was absent from the hotel. Later that night, a rider dismounted at the stable. Al Riley discovered that the rider was Jim McVie. Agnes confronted her husband, who admitted to killing MacDonald and stealing his money, which totaled over $8,000 in gold coins. The next morning, Agnes seemed to be in a forgiving mood, and she cooked her husband a hearty breakfast. Jim was in the midst of eating when he dropped to the floor and rolled about in violent convulsions and died soon afterwards. Agnes McVie poisoned her husband for killing the handsome MacDonald the night before. Okay, so she had no problem with death unless it was something she wanted kept alive.
Yeah.
Wow. And then she just offed her husband.
As you do.
As you do. Agnes McVie and Al Riley.
He outlived his usefulness.
Yeah, apparently. Well, he got uppity. He started to have his own ideas. That's the real problem. Agnes McVie and Al Riley made plans to dispose of Jim McVie's body, but overlooked one small detail. Jim McVie had been so intent on killing MacDonald, because he was jealous, that he forgot about the young girl that MacDonald had bought. Law enforcement officers found the young girl wandering along the road and discovered that this young girl was only one of many held prisoners at the 108 Mile Hotel.
That's right. That's the ones I was talking about being
She
up.
told them that she'd been bought by MacDonald, who'd been overtaken on the road and shot to death by a man named Jim, who fed her and the other girls daily while they were prisoners at the 108 Mile Hotel. When law enforcement searched the hotel, they found 8 young girls, all chained together and half-starved. All of them were terrified, and it was some time before they could be persuaded to tell their stories, all of which were very similar. Later, sifting through the ashes in each fireplace, the officers found the remains of human bones. Oh, so she burnt some of them too.
Yeah, she did. That's what I'm saying. So you have 59 that were found in the lakes and then one in a fireplace. I think, how many did she off?
Agnes McVie and Al Riley were taken to Fort Kamloops, then on to New Westminster, jailed and charged with kidnapping and murder. In June 1885, shortly before she was brought to trial, she committed suicide by poisoning. Al Riley was found guilty of his charges and hanged.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So they were quite the trio.
They were quite the murderous trio. And because there were 3 of them, they could pull all this off. But yeah,
So if you need to start an interesting hotel and need to murder people, I guess you need several legs, you need some land, you need at least 3 so that you can help deal with this nonsense.
You need a nice lake for disposal purposes.
I guess you need to figure out cash only deals.
Cash only deals.
You know, that's it might take a while.
Okay.
But geez, you know, she was a complete nutter.
Yeah. 100%. No,
that's why I wanted to point out that 59 were found.
She was powerful. She was intentional. She knew what she was doing.
And she was pretty.
And this comes into this story. So this is from a website, a blog site called Galactic Junction. And it was posted in 2018. And this person is not someone who's into ghosts. And that's what made this story so much more compelling.
That's interesting.
Ghosts are the least likely thing I will spend any time considering. I've never liked the idea of ghosts and can say without equivocation, anything without skin is not welcome around me. Thus, my recent experience is made even more incomprehensible, as I have encountered a strange, inexplicable apparition. I have Canadian friends who live in the beautiful, wild, and reportedly haunted Caribou Region of central British Columbia, which is where we live now, and through them have learned about this remarkable place. Through here trekked ever-hopeful miners in the mid-1800s. These intrepid folk were headed to the Caribou goldfields, which promised wealth and vast riches of which they had only ever dreamed. To accommodate the great number of miners, the Caribou Wagon Road was built in early 1861-1862, which makes sense because Victoria went from 300 people to 30,000 people in 1 year, and it was because of this gold rush. Along the route, settlements sprang up to aid those who were mining and build settlers' fortunes from supplying the miners' needs at the same time. One of these was a 108 Mile House. 320 acres preempted by William J. Roper in 1863. In the years 1875 to 1885, legend holds that 108 Mile House had a hotel called 108 Mile Hotel and was run by, as we've talked about, Agnes McVie. She was aided by her husband, Jim McVie, and Al Riley, her brother-in-law or son-in-law, depending on whose version of the story you read. The legend says Agnes was a serial killer who murdered miners for their gold. She is said to also have kidnapped, tortured, and sold young girls to miners passing through. Agnes's story takes a turn when she kills her husband over the mishandling of Jim McDonald's murder. McDonald was a miner and one of Agnes's white slavery customers. He just bought a 17-year-old girl and was heading back to the goldfields when Jim McVie killed him on the wagon road to steal the gold he was carrying, also because he was jealous, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was because of the jealousy.
Yeah. The girl escaped when McDonald was murdered and through a chain of events caused the arrest of Agnes and her brother-in-law, Al Riley, plus the discovery of those 8 kidnapped girls in the basement of the hotel. But did Agnes's story really end with her self-induced swallowing of poison in 1885? Fast forward to May 2018. The 108 Mile Ghost Tours, which I hear are coming back, which would be very cool.
Yeah.
A charitable organization which raises funds for the 108 Mile House Heritage Site, held a ghost tour on May 12th. During these tours, guests are encouraged to take as many photographs as they like. When photographs taken from the event were examined, 2 people were noticed staring out a window of the post house. I found the photos fascinating, and one recent evening was studying them. The photos were very dark, so I enlarged the one I was looking at to help me see what may or may not have been there. I was absently staring at it, not really seeing anything. But as I continued to stare, something seemed to be taking shape, and I became more than a little curious. It indeed took shape, and that shape was of an older woman. I wondered how I'd missed seeing her for what felt like a long time when she'd become quite visible, although everything was still in black and white. I continued looking at the woman in the photo, and suddenly I realized she was moving. What? I studied it even closer, and she was moving her head and shoulders as though she was working on something, back and forth, this way and that. I was stunned. Jaw dropped open, staring with bugged-out eyes. I kept questioning what I thought. Was I even viewing was real? Then, beyond belief, she turned her head and looked straight at me and moved closer to the window. She was watching me, watching her. At that point in time, I had one of those moments that us with absolute clarity. I closed that page out on the screen of my phone with greater speed than I thought possible, and as the screen was disappearing, I slapped my phone face down on my lap. Yep, cowardice at the prospect of seeing a ghost was complete. My initial and profound reaction to the woman in the picture was that it was Agnes McVie. The only thing that puzzled me was this lady was older, had white hair pulled up into a bun, wore a dark dress with a white lacy collar, and was quite pretty. I had never heard of killer Agnes being attractive, so I was slightly baffled. After a little time, I decided I needed to look for more information because I could not stop wondering about her. What I found stated was that she was very pretty. Wouldn't you know? That seemed to confirm what I'd seen in the window. I have not been able to go back and look at that photograph again. Nope, not a peek. I did share the experience with the leader of the ghost tour and several people who are friends and very knowledgeable in the field and realm of the paranormal. None of them to date has had this experience, and no one who has looked at the picture since I told my story has seen any movement. I know what I saw was real, and it scared the daylights out of me. My hope is that an explanation will be forthcoming, which will cause this to make sense. If anyone has an idea or has experienced such a thing, please do not hesitate to share with me. I would really like to know what happened, and maybe even be able to look at the photograph again. After all, no one likes being afraid of a digital ghost. I have never heard that before.
A photograph coming to life?
No.
Especially in digital form.
Yeah, no, never ever heard that. So the fact that she had that experience, wow, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Well, it seems like Agnes McVie was strong in life and probably strong afterwards. That was why I didn't feel comfortable upstairs.
Yeah.
I just assume, even though that house is newer than what the hotel was, she just took over it. And my suspicions were confirmed. The president basically said that the spirits traverse around the property.
Yeah, she did say that. They move from building to building. They don't seem tied to one building, but they also do seem sort of tied to the property.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that was really interesting.
It was an interesting thing to bring up.
It's an amazing place. Honestly, moving up here, I have been very surprised by the number of ghosts and haunted places up here. Quesnel, 108 Mile.
Oh, it makes sense. It's the Caribou Trek, and it's very clear how many people have been murdered along it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it makes sense. It's the Wild West. It was the Wild West after the Wild West was the Wild West.
100%.
You know, and you had very, very little policing.
Well, and to be honest with you, in a way, it still is.
Yeah, it is.
We have huge gaps in communication, huge gaps in cell phone reception.
Well, that's why Highway 16 is the Highway of Tears.
Highway of Tears, where all the women have
been
gone
murdered.
Missing. Yeah,
murdered, missing.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about a long time unsolved crime of Maddie
Scott.
Find Madison Scott. Blah blah blah. It's ironic because Ian and I were talking about her again. And her body was recovered recently.
Yeah, after
literally
12
the next
years.
day. Less than 12 hours, the story broke loose from CBC.
Yeah, it was really
that
weird.
She was found, and I swear I've driving through Vanderhoof. I thought I've seen her on the side of the highway.
Yeah, I believe that.
There's more than a few people that I've seen along the Highway of Tears.
Oh yeah,
because my family village, for my native side, I'm half Scottish, half native.
Yeah,
is Kitwinga, and ironically enough, Ian found that 108 Mile Heritage Site is on Kitwinga Drive
and Caribou Drive. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's It's all interesting how everything's tied together.
It is.
And my autism, I just remembered the name of the place in Idaho is called Wallace.
There you go. You go.
Segueing back to the very beginning where we're talking about Dante's Peak, it's not a bad movie.
It's a terrible movie.
Ian thinks it's terrible. I think it's not
terribly acted. It's a terrible story.
It's fun.
I could have written it.
Yes, well, you take the credit for terrible things. So that's. I
guess you're right. I'm not saying much for my. Yeah.
Good job. So Dante's Peak. That's a fun movie. It's not.
No, it is fun. It's very entertaining.
Not to be taken seriously.
Yeah. But it was fun to go to the town.
Wallace is itself haunted, so we'll be talking about Wallace as well.
We will have a whole Helena, episode on that.
St. Regis in Montana. Republic in Washington.
Yeah, we got lots of stuff for you.
My
Coeur d'Alene. We've got a lot of. We came back pretty full of stories.
Very full.
Yeah, and we're also going to be, for all of our patrons, the side stories of ghost stories we have heard. Jason and I recorded every day of our trip, so for the next, I think it's 6 episodes of ghost stories we have heard available to our patrons.
Yeah, that's going to start.
That's going to be basically a virtual road trip that you'll be joining us on. So that's going to be fun.
Torrential rainstorms on I-90 in northern Montana. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh!
So you'll be joining us for that. But we are going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with thanking our patrons and some more information on what's coming up right after this.
Right after. Yes, welcome back.
So that break was a little longer than we'd anticipated. Ran into some pretty serious technical issues where Jason and I recorded the end of the show
like several times. The problem is, I think it's our new equipment,
but we recorded the end of the show, the full end, and then when I went back in to put in the music breaks and things like that, it wasn't there.
No, it was weird. It was grayed out.
So I had a little temper tantrum, and now I'm fine.
Well, it's probably just the new equipment.
Yeah.
Getting adjusted to it. But
anyway.
It's all good. It seems to be working now.
So what we were telling you was what's going to be coming up.
It is interesting, though, because when you were gone, because you had to deal with your you were unwell, from the smoke.
Yeah.
I thought I felt a presence across the house.
Ooh, weird. Oh,
Yeah.
hold on. I got to go kill a tiny dog.
A dog.
Dog has been successfully killed.
Yeah.
No, he's fine. I just made him go
good.
upstairs.
Yes, he likes to interrupt things. But
well, he likes to be with us at all
input.
times.
That was his input.
That was his input.
So anyways, yeah, I don't know, but after you came back and I pointed at the machine yesterday when you hit record and I'm like, the time stamp
yeah, you
seems
did.
paused.
And I didn't see it. I don't know how I didn't see it because, well, it's pretty friggin' obvious. It's the weirdest thing.
Well, it's working now is the
anyway,
point. But
yes.
We tried several takes of the last
and then I just had it. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. We're never doing this again.
But, I don't know if it's the machine that's new or, well, anyways, you were off dealing with your nose from the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sitting here. I thought I saw a presence across the other side of the house.
Well, hopefully no.
And that's interesting because it's an interesting segue. Our neighbor across the street will probably be on a future episode because his place is seriously haunted.
Super haunted. Yeah. And upstairs and downstairs and in the basement.
His wife recently passed, which is sad, but his daughter who lives in the basement says she feels the thing all the time. And we met the other daughter who's visiting from Vancouver for his 75th birthday. So happy birthday, Weldon. Yeah, let's just say she's like, I do not go down
She's
there.
like a lightning rod for this
so
thing.
Funny. Yeah,
she's
like,
very funny. She was yelling at it.
Love her. She has the best expression.
Yeah.
She's like, I ain't going down there.
Yeah, she's fun. So, but we were going to tell you. So what's coming up? Jay and I went on this road trip.
Yes.
Which is why we were talking about Ghost Stories We Have Heard, which is that special short tiny episode show we do for our patrons. We mostly read ghost stories and we talk about them.
So I don't have a ton of feedback.
No, but I'll read the story and then we'll talk about it. But we did it a little bit differently this way. This time we had our 6-day one and only summer vacation because new job, I'm off, and so what we did was we recorded every day we were leaving wherever we or going to or whatever in between each place. So you're going to hear from us as we drive through Calgary and Edson and Helena, Montana.
Yeah.
Where else?
Wallace, Idaho, St. Regis, Coeur d'Alene.
It
was beautiful. Republic, Washington.
There will probably be a whole episode just on Wallace. Part of the reason being, so two reasons. Number one, Wallace has been kind of like the town that time forgot. It's got some very cool old buildings. Yeah. So secondly, a terrible, terrible movie was made there with Pierce Brosnan.
Dante's Peak is fine.
It's terrible.
It's fun.
It's so terrible it's fun. No, that is true.
It is fun. It's, but Wallace is it's an interesting town.
It's crazy, huh?
Interstate 90 is literally just built over it.
Yeah, it's like they didn't even try.
It's like they just put it on stilts and there it is. This poor town, Wallace, has got the interstate on these stilts right over it.
Yeah. So we're doing it a bit differently this time.
And I got great photos throughout the trip.
And then while we were on the trip, we realized how many places we could do whole episodes on. Yeah. And that's when this new idea came up. And I really want you guys to pay attention to this. So I hope you don't skip this part because you think it's all about thanking the patrons. What we want you to do is just Google your hometown with the word either ghost stories or the word haunted after it.
And please send us
send them on in and let's get talking about this because that's really how we're going to have the actual ghost story with the actual history from the actual place.
That's right.
That's the best way to do it. So you don't have to be on the show. Just send us the stories you find and we'll mention your name and we'll talk about the fact that you live there and maybe we can have a little chat off air or on about what it's like to live there or what you've noticed or anything else like that. But let's do it that way. I think that's a little less intimidating because I noticed when I would say to people, send us the ghost stories from your town and you can come on the show and talk about them. And people are like, no.
Yes.
So, and I get that. So let's do it that way. So what I want you to do as soon as you're done listening, Google the name of your town.
We'd love to hear from you.
And then Google haunted or ghost stories,
and
then send them on in.
Please feel free. It would be nice.
We'd love for you to send them in
virtual
to
travel show.
Exactly. We'd love for you to send them to ghosts N, the letter N, ghosts N bears @gmail.com, because that is the easiest way to keep track of things. We're also, of course, on Facebook and Instagram, Ghosts and Bears. But that's a little tougher because the messages don't, I don't know what Facebook or Meta is doing these days, but the messages get all weird.
Yeah, they do get a little strange.
So yeah, please send them that way. Ghostsandbears @gmail.com. And also we want to thank our lovely, lovely patrons who stuck with us during our enforced and unexpected hiatus. You guys have been amazing. We're looking forward to giving you those ghost stories we have heard episodes for your listening pleasure. As well, of course, once you've been a patron for 3 months, you're going to get some merch.
Everyone loves some good merch.
Everyone loves merch. You get, depending on what level you're at, there's stickers, coffee mugs, T-shirts. And if you do get your T-shirt,
all caps,
please send us a picture of you in the T-shirt. We'd love that. Or your coffee mug in its wild, natural habitat. We also have our Redbubble store, and that's got some really fun merch you can get with our logo on it and things, or my book covers. We're also going to be introducing some new designs that are one of our audio video guys, Chris, and his wife made for us.
Sounds good.
And those are pictures of ghosts and bears, and I think they are amazing. So we're going to have those in there too.
Yeah. So Helena, a few places.
Yeah.
Helena was amazing.
Helena was surprisingly amazing.
Yeah, we were.
And much like Salem, Oregon, we did not know Helena was the capital.
Yeah, we stumbled upon it. It was beautiful. We had a beautiful place to stay, and I got some great photos.
Yeah, we started exploring the town, and we were like, holy cow. Every time you turned a corner, more beautiful homes, more beautiful old homes. Same with Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene.
So many beautiful houses in the old part of Coeur d'Alene.
I live there in my head on occasion.
It's a nice place.
I spent a lot of time in the 90s there. So yeah, good old Coeur d'Alene. And we had a fantastic dinner at Tito's restaurant. I think that's what it is.
No endorsement intended.
No, but it was there when I was there in the 90s. And you know what? The pricing's still excellent. It's not runaway train. And I got to swim in Coeur d'Alene. And beautiful. Anyways, we'd love to thank you guys. So,
we do. We want to thank our patrons. And those lovely, beautiful, and amazing people include
Maria,
Gina,
Sharon,
Dawn,
Adam,
Bryce,
Sherry,
Marion,
Kathleen,
Alexa,
Ruth,
Mary Frances,
Gina and Victoria,
Sandy,
Christopher,
David,
Ashley,
Jeremiah,
Elizabeth,
Sam,
BB Nix,
Melinda,
Jordan,
Tammy,
Taya,
Evan,
Arwen,
Steve,
Kyle and Charlotte,
Catherine,
and Myri. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys are the best, and we couldn't do this without you.
Yes, thanks so much.
Honestly, truly, couldn't do it without you.
So
and
you have a wonderful day or evening, weekend.
Yeah, whatever you're doing. And remember, we are the only podcast that gives you the actual ghost story
with the actual history
in the actual place. And hopefully, we will hear from that place that is close to you very, very soon.
Bye now.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great everything. Bye.
Bye.